Hello and welcome to another episode of Death by Bunjie. The quest for a successor to Bunjie continues. I've got my phone out. We're going to do another one of those videos where I look at a new crossbow manufacturer, a different crossbow manufacturer, and sort of get my thoughts on the crossbow, what their offerings are. The reason for this is to see whether this is going to be the successor to Bunjie. Is this one of the possibles, right? Is it on the list of crossbows that I will venture out into the world and try out in person? So I've gone to Mission Crossbows. That's the one we're looking at here. We're looking at their webpage right here on the Pahoney, on the phone. Home, missioncrossbows.com. The hard-hitting accuracy and superior stealth of the Sub 1 XR. We have already uncovered another form of accuracy. Can you believe that? This is hard-hitting accuracy. We had the hyper accuracy of the Barnett crossbows, right? We had the extreme accuracy. I think that was Bear X crossbows. And here we have hard-hitting accuracy. Okay. As I've said before, there's only one kind of accuracy. You're either accurate or you're not. And if your crossbow is accurate, well, I'll be the judge of that, right? When I get it in the backyard, in the crossbow range, when we start shooting it out there, right? But until then, I'll take their word for it, I guess. But we have hard-hitting accuracy and superior stealth. I don't really care for that term hard-hitting because we're starting to get into that, hey, this is a rifle, right? Hard-hitting. We're still, with archery equipment, with crossbows, trying to kill by cutting open some vitals, creating some blood loss, that sort of thing. We're also given, very similar to our Real Tree Arrow Momentum Calculator, an opportunity to sign up. I can tell you already that I have already signed up for Mission's website. I sign up for all the free stuff, right? All the free emails. You know, it takes 2 seconds to delete an email, but you can always look stuff over, and it's neat to have. So we have the Sub 1 XR, I think, I have looked at this one. Unlike some of the other videos like this I've done, I have looked over their website before. Talked about them in some other videos, and they do have some interesting stuff. The Sub 1 XR, I think, is what I would consider their flagship at this point, is the Mission Sub 1. Now, when we talk about accuracy, though, Mission does have sort of a monopoly on accuracy. In fact, if you scroll down here, it says on this webpage, accuracy first, trademark. Now, it's not a registered trademark, which suggests to me they haven't registered it with the federal government in America, at least. But nonetheless, they are claiming the right to use that term exclusively in trade. That's what a trademark is. So accuracy first, that is their trademark. When we talk about accuracy, Sub 1 refers to the Sub 1 groups, 1-inch groups, less than 1-inch groups, at 100 yards. So when they talk about accuracy, these folks are pretty serious, okay? As you know, if you read my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Story, or if you watched any number of Death by Bunjie videos, you know that in my opinion, literally in my book, accuracy is number one with crossbows. It's number one with crossbow hunting. It's very important. If you're not accurate, everything else goes out the window. So we got to have a consistently accurate crossbow. And this claims to be that crossbow. Now, keep in mind, what I'm doing with these videos right now is compiling a short list of crossbows to actually go out there and test. This may or may not be on that list, right? And I'll reveal that list down the road here. Finally, crossbows that are built like a long-range precision rifle. Here we are with that rifle talk again. I'm always a little leery of that, a little nervous about that, because I don't want us to start getting, and it's not as though, I want to be clear about that. I'm not worried about us as crossbow hunters losing that momentum that we have gained to get into archery seasons. I'm not so much worried about that as I don't want to encourage new crossbow hunters to think of their crossbows as though they are rifle-style hunting weapons. They are not. There are some similarities, just like there are some similarities with compound bows. But just as though there are similarities, there are differences. And there's a big difference between crossbows and rifles in terms of the concepts that we employ and the methods that we use in hunting. And we need to keep those in our mind. And I don't like to sort of blur those lines. I don't like that very much, okay? When they talk about that, though, our benchmark fire control technology features a 2-stage match grade trigger. Match grade, really what they're talking about is it's match grade. It's something that's high enough quality to be used in a match, in a contest, a shooting contest. So it's a high-end trigger. Our Easy Load, again a trademark, bolt retention arm, and our one-of-a-kind decocking button that allows shooters to safely decock their crossbow without disengaging the safety or firing a bolt. We invited the industry's leading experts to experience it firsthand, and they were blown away by the accuracy and safety of this innovative trigger system. Very interesting. Okay, when we look at that retention spring, right, that little trademarked, patented arrow retention arm that they refer to it actually looks more like a little finger that comes down than an arm. But that's interesting. So you slide your arrow under that, and that's what's holding it down. I suspect that reduces a little bit of vibration and that little brrr noise that you get with some of the older Excaliburs like mine, where you have the arrow retention spring. And a lot of crossbows use that. Just a little piece of tin that sticks down there. It's bent, it's molded to hold that arrow in place. So that is a nice design. I like that. I can look at this right here. When we look at the Sub 1 XR, we are going to look at that crossbow, and that is, I can tell you without even going to that portion of the page, the Sub 1 XR is their high-end model. They have a Sub 1 and a Sub 1 Light. That's kind of neat. There's like small, medium, and supersized. That's what it is, right? And I'm familiar with that. I understand what that kind of language. So I kind of like the nomenclature, the classes of crossbows that they offer and how they have designed that concept, that idea. Very easy to understand for me. The Light shoots at like 335 feet per second, but it's a smaller, more manageable crossbow for smaller framed people perhaps. And maybe Genevieve would like one like that, for example. The Sub 1 is their standard. That's like 385 feet per second, something like that in that ballpark. That is a tried, true, and tested crossbow. It is a model that has been around for a while. That's awesome. The Sub 1 XR is their newest offering that's been out for a year or so. So that's the one we're looking at. As I've said, I'm kind of looking at the high end of each of these manufacturers' crossbows, right? I'm looking for their flagship offering. That's what I'm going to be examining. That way I can look at one manufacturer versus another in terms of specs, and then decide from there which 3 or 4 I'm going to go out and actually try in person, that kind of thing. And I'll do more videos about that stuff down the road. Let's look at Sub 1 XR Tech. We click on there, kaboom, we are looking at some neat crossbows here. We got a camo, Realtree Edge, and black. I gotta say, I'm kind of a fan of black. I really am. Now, on my crossbow, as large as it is, if that were entirely black, that might stand out a little bit more in a tree stand. So camo really works for me in that sense. But I do a lot of blind hunting too, and black is attractive when you're hunting out of a blind because you want as much darkness in there and preserve as much of that darkness as possible. If a deer's looking into that black window and all of a sudden they see a camouflage set of limbs come up in front of them, that might catch their eye a little bit. In fact, I am confident it, in fact, does catch their eye because it has happened to me. But as we look at these crossbows, I really like the design and appearance of this crossbow, and I also like the black coloring. I really like that, okay? So we're going to click on the black one and we'll pick this bad boy apart with just these pictures right here without going any further. If we scroll over here, this has the double limb designs from the side here. You can see that at the very front of that, we see that there's no stirrup. However, there is a couple little feet that stick out, and they're even angled a little bit. It's like asking for me to sit in a blind and lean that crossbow, set that crossbow in front of me, lean it up against my knee, just like I do with my current crossbow, where it is supported by the stirrup, where the arrow is supported by the stirrup. This doesn't have a stirrup, but it does have that little foot sticking out to keep the limbs and cams and whatnot from getting dirt and leaves and everything else on them, and to protect that arrow. I also like that foregrip on the front. I like to have my hand out as far as possible in the front for greater support. It depends on the crossbow. Until you personally hold these things, you don't know about feel. That rear grip, I do like that rear grip. I'm not interested in the camo one right now. I'll stay on one picture here. So it's going to keep jumping. Let's see if we got some more pictures somewhere else. So there's your high-end trigger that we're talking about. This is an easier to manage picture, I guess. The Picatinny rail up there with the scope mounted on it, interesting. That little orange thing, I think, has to do with the cocking and decocking system. And so that is part of that. And then are 410 feet per second. And again, I'm looking pretty much in that range. When I go back in my days of hunting with a crossbow, one of the reasons I went with 3, there was a 400 feet per second crossbow available, even from Excalibur, around the time that I purchased Bunjie, that I purchased a 305 feet per second crossbow. They were having some problems with that, right? And when those first crossbows come out that reach those thresholds, the first crossbows to ever reach 350 feet per second, they had a lot of problems. And it wasn't just one manufacturer. It was a threshold, a barrier that a lot of manufacturers struggled with. 400 feet per second was no different. Time will tell whether 500 feet per second is different. 400 feet per second has been around for a while, right? It's been around for a decade in crossbow hunting. So I feel pretty comfortable with 410 feet per second, any of the offerings around that, because I feel like that's something people have been hunting with, that speed, and I think we'll be comfortable if we stay around those speeds. Shouldn't have too many problems. Here we got 7.6 pounds physical weight. I've learned something else new from looking at this webpage. The physical weight is 7.6 pounds. We've heard about mass weight with some manufacturers, right? I think Barnett talked about mass weight. Gearhead Archery, when I looked at them, they talked about the aluminum weight, okay, which is pretty descriptive because the frame of that crossbow is made out of aluminum. I get that. This one is the physical weight, okay, as opposed to the emotional weight, I guess, right? Is that what they're talking about? I don't know. But the physical weight. I don't know why they don't just say, as pictured, it weighs 7.6 pounds. Okay. Trigger pull, 3.0 pounds. 3 pounds, 0 ounces. That's pretty average. I have had some conversations with folks. I never even paid attention to trigger pull before, but I've had conversations with folks recently who've told me it makes a big difference in terms of their accuracy. And some of them, in fact, are moving them down below the 2.6 pounds or so that we've seen in some of these other crossbows that I've looked at here recently. But some people have actually modified their triggers to go even lower than that, to the point where they're a little risky and in the wrong hands, they could be dangerous. I like out of the box, I don't want to tinker with stuff too much. I think if I shoot this and feel comfortable with 3 pounds, for me, that will be satisfactory. But I totally get that. Some people are, if you got to pull real hard, that's obviously going to affect your accuracy. I get that. And if it's going off too quick and surprising you and you're jumping, that can affect your accuracy as well. Until you shoot these things, you just don't know. Let's go to page 2 of the specs and look at that bad boy real quick. Can we do that? We can. Specs. This thing is 30.5 inches long. That's a little bit shorter than Bunjie. I think Bungie's like 32 and a half, something like that, somewhere in that ballpark. Bungie's, again, I've joked about this, but it's the world's largest crossbow, right? So I get that. The width axle to axle on this is 9.1 inches and 12.5 inches. I had forgotten that it was that narrow. We'll look at some other pictures, see the width of it. I was thinking it was a little bit wider than that, but I'm betting it's around 15, 16 inches maximum, completely wide. The total width of this thing, probably around 15 inches or so. And an 80% let off. When I first started looking at crossbows, 80% let off, I wrote about this in my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Story. But one of the things I started looking at 11 years ago when I got into crossbow hunting was the fact that I didn't have to worry about let off. I bought a recurve crossbow. I don't care about let off because I'm not holding the string back. The crossbow is. Over time, this has become more important, however. There are 2 reasons why let off, and most of your compound bows are going to be between the 80 and 90, somewhere in that range of the let off. But there's 2 reasons why that let off is significant in this day and age when it comes to crossbows. One is string wear and tear, specifically with regard to your serving. If you have, without this let off, your crossbow's now holding back all of the poundage, all of the draw weight on that string. And that can cause some greater wear and tear on your serving. My crossbow, it never has been a problem for me, but I replace my crossbow string once or twice every season. Not a big deal because I have them on hand and I rotate them out and I get them reserved and all that. I never had a problem with it. I mean, and it's easy enough to do, not a big deal. But that let off can help prevent some of that string wear and tear. The other reason why I am currently interested in let off and paying attention to that is cocking. One problem we didn't have 10 years ago with crossbows was we didn't have cranks. typically. Most of them did not have cranks. There were cranks offered, but the cranks were really offered more in the context of if you have a handicap or are otherwise unable to use the rope, then you would purchase a crank system. That was the reason that people had cranks. Today, especially with the recurve crossbows and the Raven crossbows, the crank comes as a standard piece of equipment. You got to have a crank. Like, you really can't do these things, these modern crossbows, without that crank. Especially on a recurve where there's no let off. As you're standing up and you lose your leverage, all of a sudden now you're at your weakest point, but you're still pulling back the full 285 pounds perhaps, or even more. With this crossbow, that 80% let off, as you're getting closer to the top of your draw, all of a sudden it gets a little easier and you can finish the job. I have watched videos of these, and maybe I'll throw them into this video to show you, but there are videos of people cocking and decocking these Mission crossbows with a rope. Over 11 years, I've hunted a certain way. I have developed my own personal hunting strategies and tactics, and I refer to that as the Death by Bunjie crossbow method. It's my method of hunting. It's the way that I feel comfortable, and I think I'm pretty successful hunting that way. I don't want to modify that. I don't want to change that if I don't have to. And I don't want my new crossbow to require me to hunt in a different way. I don't want to do that. I want my new crossbow to make the way that I hunt even better. That's what I want. In fact, I don't just want that. I insist on it, and I won't accept anything else. Really what I want to do is hunt the same way that I have hunted for 11 years with a crossbow, just a little bit better. That's all, right? I just want improvements on my speed, improvements on accuracy, if that's a thing, right? I'm accurate with Bunjie, but if I get more consistent accuracy out to a further yardage with a faster crossbow and greater penetration without experimenting with arrows and heavy arrows and all that stuff, maintaining an even flatter shooting trajectory, those are all pluses. Whatever crossbow that I pick has to improve that method, not get in the way of it, okay? We're not going backwards here. That's a long way of saying the let-off and compound crossbows is something that I'm willing to look at now. I haven't made my mind up at all on any crossbow. Until I go out there and try them in person, I will not be able to make up my mind, but this is part of that discussion. Okay, more tech. Controlled acceleration, synced cams. This high let-off, fully synced cam system eliminates the horizontal knock travel, providing uniform arrow launch and effortless cocking and decocking. And notice how it does that without turning itself into a compound bow the way the Gearhead archery crossbow did. That crossbow had a whisker biscuit on it and talked about paper tuning. This does not talk about paper tuning. That's a plus to me. Patented flight deck. The flight deck is as crucial to the accuracy of a crossbow as the barrel is to a rifle. Very good. Now we're sort of putting the rifle talk into perspective. We're not saying this is a rifle. We're saying it's relevant to the accuracy discussion. If we look here, interesting. Fit and feel. 6 different length of pull adjustments and 1¼ inches of adjustment in the comb for a customized fit. Very interesting. And what's this do? Oh, I don't think I saw that before. So yeah, that moves it back and forth. Okay. And we got, the cheek piece goes up and down. That's the comb that they're referring to. So we can adjust the buttstock and make it longer. So we're around 30½ inches. I wonder if it gets beyond 30½, or if that's I wonder if, is this 30½ or is this 30½? I don't know. But also our cheek piece can go up and down so that we can, depending on the shape of your head and all that good stuff. So we'll get rid of this, play that video.
At the heart of all sub-1s is the benchmark fire control system, which allows you to cock and decock the bow without having to shoot it off.
I'm going to pause it right there. One of the things that I've noticed about this is an improvement beyond the decocking of the Excalibur crossbow that I am familiar with. With the Excalibur, especially the newer ones with the anti-dry fire installed, I am fortunate enough to not have an anti-dry, fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, depending on how you look at it. But without the anti-dry fire installed on Bunjie, for example, it's very easy for me to put the crossbow on fire, hold the rope, fire the crossbow and let the rope down. With Bunjie Junior, There's an extra amount of finger acrobatics that has to go on for that. We use the crank because it's 285 pounds and I don't want it pulling that rope out of my hands. I have done it, but I would rather use the crank. So you got the crank with a wrist strap installed in one hand, and in the other hand, you got to get your hand around and push in the anti-dry fire, and then at the same time reach down and fire the, look and find it and fire then let it down past the anti-dry fire. It is a real complicated pain in the neck with Genevieve's crossbow with Bunjie Jr. I would like to avoid that. That's not really part of my crossbow hunting method. It's not. This one goes even a step beyond what I've been done for 11 years with Bunjie. This one you just simply pull back on and let it down. Once you're in decock mode, it's very simple to uncock.
To back out the limb bolts to reduce the draw weight or to replace the string in the cables without the use of a bow press.
That's big, and I want to point that out, and I talked about this in my recurves versus compound bows for 2021 video that is up on YouTube. With this crossbow, you can replace the strings and the cables. Probably even do it in the field if I had to do so. I could go to the car and have this in my crossbow toolbox that I take with me to Maryland and wherever I go. Have all my tools with me. Basically with a socket, ratchet, the whole bit, you get in there and you back these bolts out and it acts as its own bow press. It's like a built-in bow press. There are other manufacturers going to this sort of style of crossbow. That's huge because once it's backed out, it's totally safe to get your fingers in there and change the string, change the cables. In fact, it is far safer, in my opinion, this way than it is with an Excalibur. With the Excalibur, that string changing device is the only thing holding those limbs back under pressure at stress. This has some nice heavy bolts with their threads holding those limbs in position for you so you can change the string and all that. It's actually quite interesting. Now, I haven't done this in person yet. I'm going to put that little asterisk on here yet again, but it does seem attractive to me, right?
The length of this bow is only 30.5 inches long. And when the XR
cocks real easy,
9.1 inches axle to axle, making this a subcompact crossbow. The XR features cams that are synchronized together and deliver 80% let off, making the bow both easy to cock and decock. The short, wide limbs give you torsional.
That size is a big part of my interest in upgrading. The Micro Series from Excalibur, 25 inches wide, allowed me to take a deer this year that I could not have killed with Bunjie. Go watch that video. I could not have killed that deer with Bunjie because I couldn't even get Bunjie in the blind with me. It was a small shooting blind while we were traveling. You take the hand you're dealt sometimes when you're in the woods. This crossbow certainly would have worked in that scenario. So I'm looking at those Micro Series and smaller, most likely, for the new Bunjie. That size is a big factor. Another thing that we see about this crossbow, when he talks about cocking it and uncocking it, it does make it, when you have that let off, one other thing I should mention, it's going to make that crossbow a little bit quieter. It is going to make it quieter. Now, I haven't shot this in person. I keep saying that. I'm sorry for that. We'll get to that point.
It comes as bow only or as a kit. The kit features a Hawk 1.5 to 5 scope with a ballistic ranging reticle, rings that come mounted on the scope, flip-up scope covers, a machined aluminum level that comes mounted on the bow.
Ooh, interesting. That built-in level, that's important for your accuracy because you want to look at them and be able to make sure you're not canting that crossbow. You want your limbs level. If they are not level, that's one of the easiest ways to make sure that you don't have accuracy, okay? You'll be throwing stuff all over the place. Your scope will not line up if you don't have it level. So that is, and I've always been able with my giant limbs to just get a feel for that by lifting up the crossbow because those limbs are in my peripheral vision on both sides. That's like a built-in level. With a smaller, more narrow crossbow, my eyes might have to go to that level first and then back to the scope and back to hunting to make sure that I am level. That's something that you get by spending a little time in the field, but also in the backyard. The other thing too, can you get a 4-arrow quiver? Because 3 arrows is not enough for me. I'm going to need more arrows, maybe 2 quivers. I don't know. Someone comment on that. Let me know what we can do about quivers.
Detach a quiver easily in the field. The Benchmark fire control system features.
And it looks like he attached it for a right-handed shooter.
There's an ambidextrous safety, which makes it user-friendly for both left and right-handed shooters. The safety is automatically engaged when you cock the bow.
I've noticed the safety sticks out and it's on the side. Now I have on my crossbow, I'm used to that safety being able to ease that safety up, and it's where my thumb is. It's like a rifle. It's like my trusty old Model 94 Winchester 30-30. This has the safety this way, okay, it's on the side. Some of these crossbows, I don't like the design of the safety. I can just imagine like it's a little switch that you got to slide forward. You can barely get your big fingers on it, right? In the heat of the moment, I want to be able to, I don't want to have questions about that safety. I don't want to have trouble locating it. This one sticks out enough to where it feels like, it looks to me like I'll be able to activate that safety, move it side to side with my fingers while I'm still looking through the scope. I'm not looking for the safety. If I have to go look for something, it's not going to work for me.
The new XR can be cocked by hand with a rope cocker or the accessory RSD silent draw system.
Very interesting.
Easily mounted to the PCC anchor. The integrated foot stirrup is machined into the riser, which gives you the ultimate in control when cocking the bow, but reduces the overall length to just 30.5 inches. All Mission Crossbows.
There's a stirrup built into the riser. You're going to step into that in order to cock the crossbow. They also offer, I'll tell you, there's an additional stirrup you can put on the tail end of on the fore end of this thing so that you can have an even bigger stirrup if you wish. But if you can make it work without that, you got this option as well.
Are backed by an unconditional lifetime warranty.
Oh, well. Warranties, not something I've discussed an awful lot on here. Excalibur with a lifetime warranty means a lot to me. That makes you feel better when you're buying something.
Guy puts a fancy guarantee in a box because he wants you to feel all warm and toasty inside.
Yeah, makes a man feel good.
Hopefully we never get to the point where we cash in on the warranty, right?
Looking for bows with speeds over 400 feet per second, but still delivering groups that are sub 1 inch at 100 yards in a small, compact platform. So if you're looking for the pinnacle performance, the new sub...
All right, so that is a great looking crossbow. And I can tell you, I'm going to be level and honest with you right here. My mind honestly is not made up, but I will tell you that this crossbow is on the list. It is on the list of potentials. It definitely is on the list of crossbows that I am going to go try. Mission Sub 1 XR arrows. Got to look at the arrows first. What arrows are we using here, right? So the 19-inch arrows, .001, which would probably be the arrows I would choose. We have 300 grains. So now we're going to go back to the Realtree Arrow Momentum Calculator. We're jumping all over the place. Boom, we'll jump right on there. And we have a 400 grain, but we're going to jack this up to 450. Why? Because of the Rage Crossbow Tri-Pan. I have boxes of those things in my basement. Genevieve loves them. She's chosen that as her broadhead of choice. I'm going to use that broadhead assuming it shoots properly out of this crossbow if I were to purchase this crossbow. Now we're going to drop from 410 though. We're going to lose 15 feet per second or so because of that extra 50 grains that we're adding on the end of our arrow because it's going to increase the arrow weight. So we're up to 450 grains from the 400, right? Now, so we got a 300 grain arrow, 150 grain broadhead up to 450 total grains. Well, that will drop our speed down to, let's say, 395. And we're going to, not 396. Oh, if you're off by 1, that's a problem. Hopefully we get an icon here. We're going to see what happens. So our arrow speed, we're dropping down to about 395 feet per second. Puts us in the ballpark of the 400s like we like. Will it move? We're going to find out. Is this going to be a possible for the successor to Bunjie or not? It all comes down to the clicking of this button. I see some ears there. Are those ears or antlers? They're antlers. It's a moose. Look at that. Whew. It was so close. It wasn't close at all. No, your modern crossbows typically are going to moose out of the box. They're going to get this moose icon on this beloved website out of the box. We are at 155.87 foot-pounds and .789 slugs. I want to tell you, and every once in a while I get a comment from somebody, well, if you use a real heavy arrow in Bunjie, then you can reach numbers. You can moose with that. Not really. It's not the same thing because to do this, Bunjie's down to 260 feet per second. Bunjie ain't going to do it at 395 ever. And also, Bunjie would never, with any arrow weight, reach these numbers at any speed. So it's just not even going to happen. But that's not the important thing here. The important thing is I can stay around 400 feet per second. I can get .789 momentum and 155 foot-pounds of kinetic energy if I were to shoot this crossbow. This is in the mix with the other crossbows, the Barnett HyperTac 420 and other crossbows that I've reviewed and other crossbows that we will review down the road. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Death by Bunjie. I appreciate it. And until next time, all hail Bunjie. Boom, we are recording. We'll drag that down the corner. So we got that there. And we'll get that off the screen. We don't need that on the screen. We'll get rid of that for later. And kaboom. I gotta let the cat out. Well, yeah, she's gonna throw a fit. Brittany, you wanna go out? Yeah, you can go out. You don't need to cry. There you go. All right, cat had to be let out.